Today's Bible study is looking into the book of Genesis chapter 13. For this study we'll be using the English Standard Version. Genesis 13 focuses on the separation of Abram and Lot, showcasing themes of faith, humility, generosity and God's ongoing covenant promises. So Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the Negeb. Now Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver and in gold. Abram leaves Egypt after the incident with Pharaoh and Sarai. Despite his mistake, he emerges from Egypt with great wealth, showing that God's blessing continues. His riches are not only a result of Egyptian generosity, but a part of God's larger plan to prosper him as promised. And he journeyed on from the Negeb as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had made an altar at the first. And there Abram called upon the name of the Lord. Abram returns to the place where he had previously built an altar. This marks a return not just to a location but to spiritual focus. His act of calling upon the name of the Lord shows renewed worship and dependence on God after a spiritually dry and morally compromising time in Egypt. And Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together, and there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. At that time the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. As their wealth increases, so does the tension. The land cannot sustain both their herds, leading to conflict. The presence of the Canaanites and Perizzites adds an element of vulnerability, making disunity between Abram and Lot even more dangerous. Then Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right, or if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left." Abram's response is marked by humility and wisdom. As the elder and the one whom God had promised the land, Abram had the right to choose first, but he doesn't. Instead, he places peace and family above possessions. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. Lot chooses based on what he sees. The comparison to the garden of the Lord and the land of Egypt indicates it was lush and fertile. However, this choice is not based on seeking God's will or aligning with the covenant promise. Lot chooses what appears best in his eyes, a pattern that will later bring trouble. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. Lot moves near Sodom, a city known for its wickedness. The progression of Lot's life toward Sodom begins here. He pitches his tent toward the city, and later in Genesis he will dwell inside it. This decision to live near unrighteousness will have long-term consequences. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, "Lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land that you see I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted." After Lot separates from him, God reaffirms the covenant with Abram. The land promise now expands in scope. Abram is told to look in every direction. God will give all of it to him and his descendants. The offspring promise is also repeated and amplified. God compares his future descendants to the dust of the earth, a metaphor for vastness and uncountable numbers. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. God tells Abram to walk the land, symbolically taking possession of it. Even though Abram doesn't own it yet in a legal sense, God is showing that it is his by divine promise. Walking the land was a customary act of claiming ownership in ancient cultures, and it demonstrates Abram's trust in God's word. So Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. Abram settles in Hebron, a location that will become significant throughout Israel's history. His building of another altar shows his continuing pattern of worship and dependence on God. He does not build cities like Cain or Lot's descendants, but focuses on worship and relationship with God. Genesis 13 teaches us several key truths. First, it highlights the difference between walking by faith and walking by sight. Lot chose what appeared prosperous, without regard for spiritual danger. Abram, on the other hand, trusted God to provide regardless of what he gave up. Second, it shows the importance of humility and peace in relationships. Abram acted as a peacemaker, valuing unity over material gain. Lastly, it emphasizes God's faithfulness. Even after failure in Egypt, God reaffirms his promises to Abram, showing that his covenant is based on grace and not perfection. If you enjoyed this Bible study, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment about what you think of this Bible study.